Welcome back to the Fostering Financial Victories podcast. My name is Eric. I'm your host. I am joined today by Emily Butler and Rob Coleman. So hopefully this will be a very good discussion, kind of timing of this year. Emily, I want you to give some people the background of kind of what you do, because I know I'm not gonna get it right. Okay. So go ahead.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. First of all, I'm excited to be here. And I was telling Eric a while ago, that's actually perfect timing as the financial aid process opened up last week for federal aid. So what I do is basically walk students and parents through the college application process, whether that needs to start in 9th, 10th, 11th, or 12th grade. Preferably like to start in the 10th grade to start helping students develop their goals and strengths and what they're good at and what they like. Try to provide some exposure and community involvement around that, and which also helps craft their essays. And then we really, go one-on-one with applying to colleges of that fit the student, whether that's financially or, what it is they're looking for, their outcomes. So it's really tailored to the student specifically.
Okay. So I told you I would have messed that up. Mm-hmm. She does a lot with this topic. So with college funding, so Rob, you are joining us again to talk about what happens on the backside of once folks are done with college, kind of the student loan side, and what do you do from there? Very two different topics, but they kind of flow together. Yeah. So, Emily, how in the world do you find yourself in this business?
That's such a great question. So I started as a school counselor in Greenville County Schools almost 10 years ago, and really got thrown into working with seniors only, and kind of developed a love and a passion for helping students figure out what they want to do, and starting to realize that when I applied to college 20 years ago, it's much different now, and it's much more intentional. And so I went to work at a private school here in Greenville just to hone my skills more in college planning, and decided to take a leap of faith a few months ago and start my own business, and really been very busy and very pleasantly surprised.
Well, good. So is there anything that you like? Where do we start? Right. So what year from high school, what age, where do people start? My kids are not there yet. My oldest is in 6th grade, so I don't know where to even begin.
No, don't start yet.
Okay.
No, I would say the key time really is 9th or 10th grade. And that would be more just to make sure you're taking the right classes, picking those that interest you above, what looks better to a college, but also getting career exposures, having those conversations about strengths, what you're good at, possibly demonstrating interest out in the community around those things, whether it's engineering or environmental studies. Just getting involved in the community with that. So, when you start, you come in 12th grade, you kind of have lost those opportunities to be able to do that. So I really prefer that they start in the 9th or 10th grade.
So that's pretty early.
Yeah, it is.
That's pretty early. From a money perspective, right? So we get a lot of questions from folks about saving for college, kind of preparing to be able to finance it. Mm-hmm. What are some mistakes that people make leading up to it? And if you could give that piece of advice, what would they need to do early to kind of prepare and put themselves in a good position for their kid to have a really good opportunity for school?
Right. I would say the most common thing that parents say is, I wish we would have known that. And that usually comes around choosing classes for high school. So a lot of times students just take whatever their teacher recommends them for, or this sounds good, or, not really having any intention surrounding their classes. And they wish that they could go back on the transcript and, have different things there and be able to explore different opportunities. So because this is kind of going off what you're saying, but as schools are becoming test optional and not really relying on the SAT and ACT more, it's shifting more to the classes that you take, your GPA, your rank, and the rigor. So I think that's the most common thing that I hear over and over again is I wish we had known what classes we should have taken.
Okay. So from a financing perspective, Rob, you work with a lot of folks and kind of have a good background on the student loan perspective once people are finished with their degree. Is there a piece of advice that you would give someone now to avoid some of the problems that we see? Like, talk through some of what we see, I guess, is from the how do you fix this loan problem?
So we see a lot of clients or just people that are coming out of grad school, and it's really easy to get loans from a student loan perspective, these grad plus loans, and they probably take out more than they need to because they're like, oh, we'll pay it off later. And they have such a large amount that it's just a really big bear to tackle and figure out what's the balance to deal with it. So a lot of things that we say, Eric and I also give talks to med students and always telling them, take out what you need for tuition and take out as little as you can on the grad plus, just because it can be, Eric, you've seen it too, probably. We've seen some married couples coming out of grad school with close to 7 figures in student loan debt.
Oh, yeah.
And so just limiting that because they think, hey, we'll pay it off later, but they really don't realize how long that payback is going to be.
So, Emily, do you help kind of parents start thinking through what the financing options might need to look like on your side of this?
Absolutely. My goal is to not necessarily go to college for free, but really look at the affordability. So I can walk students through the parents really through net price calculator versus, what the school actually costs versus what they're expected to pay. And everyone is looking for merit. I want my student to get merit scholarships because they work so hard. And so the thing I find myself saying over and over again is the only way to get merit is to be your stats, your test scores, your rank, your rigor need to be far above what their, top 75% is. And that is the only way to earn merit money. So I think it's a common misconception that everyone's receiving merit money or merit scholarship. So I try to, at least in the 11th grade, to walk them through what the actual price of the cost of college is, or that specific college versus like what they will be expected to pay.
So what's the average right now across the board for going to school?
Oh gosh,
from what you see when you net it all out,
probably about $35,000 a year. In all honesty, Clemson is $36,000 per year. It's about $50,000 for out-of-state students, which is shocking because it was not like that a very long time ago.
No, it wasn't.
So is that the total cost? $35 per year, kind of?
Correct.
Not just tuition.
Room, and board.
Mm-hmm.
And luckily we have the state scholarships, the Life, Hope, and Palmetto Fellows, which does help a bit. But I think parents are really shocked to see even how much our in-state institutions cost.
So with in-state versus out-of-state tuition, are there any tricks of the trade that families could use if they know? All right, so if they live in South Carolina, they know their child wants to go to Georgia. Mm-hmm. Are there any tricks that they can use to get in-state tuition of Georgia if they start early enough? And if so, what would it be?
No.
All right. No. Okay. Can't do it.
No, absolutely not.
Okay. From applying for loans and FAFSA, you mentioned the timeline earlier. Okay. What is FAFSA and why is it necessary?
Right.
Let's start there.
That's a great question. So the FAFSA is the free application for federal student aid. And it is honestly just a document, a federal document using the IRS data retrieval tool from two prior tax returns to determine if you're eligible for any federal aid.
So like federal grants?
So a Pell Grant.
Okay.
So basically if you are a family of 4 making $35,000 or less, and loans. If you want to be eligible for any loans, you do need to fill it out.
Okay, so what, from the student loan perspective, Again, what is that process on the front end? We see it on the back side of this, and I wonder if there's a way that we could kind of advise people from, all right, we see on how we kind of fix it on the back end. How do we avoid some of the mistakes on the front end? Like, what do you see people using? Is it more federal loans? Is it more private loans? Is it subsidized, unsubsidized, any of that stuff?
Great question. I would say the Parent Plus loan is the standard offer.
So from getting through schools without taking financial help.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so what are some tips that you give your clientele of, besides looking at the scholarship perspective or the merit-based
Mm-hmm.
pieces,
Mm-hmm.
what else do you have them pursue to try and get through this without having to take out loans?
Yeah. So schools will offer work study also in any financial aid package. So, when they break down the cost and let you know how much you owe, also included in there is the work study. So there's that. There's also, you could get a job off campus. There are opportunities where after your freshman year, you can, become a resident assistant and have some of your your room and board waived. Moving off campus could technically be cheaper, your meal plan. But you also have to keep in mind that most colleges raise their tuition slightly every year. So you need to account for that as well.
Okay. So Rob, what do you see most common when clients come in looking for help advice on how do they get rid of these loans? Like, do they have more federal loans? And kind of talk through what is subsidized and unsubsidized loans actually, what does that mean?
Yeah. I'd say the majority of clients come in and they have federal loans.
Okay.
And some come in with a mixture of federal and private. And so what we want to look at on the back end is what's the most efficient way to pay it down. And so there's a lot of programs out there like public service loan forgiveness. There are some other types of loan forgiveness, which is taxable, where public service loan forgiveness is tax-free, at least the way that the game is written right now.
Sure.
There's a lot of discussions of things changing, but so we want to look at what's their occupation. Are they eligible for public service loan forgiveness or not? And if they are, we always want to remain or keep those loans federal loans, because it's not public service loan forgiveness eligible if they refinance or move them to the private loans. And so we'll see clients that are eligible, but they also have private loans. And so we want to figure out, well, we're going to take two different approaches with paying back these student loans. With the federal loans, we're trying to pay as little as possible for as long as possible through that 120 payments for forgiveness. And then on the federal loans, we're looking at what's their interest rate? Do we need a refinance? Is it a manageable payment? And then probably being more aggressive on the the private side and paying as little as possible on the federal side. And so there's a lot of different repayment plans that they can get into under the repayment or under the federal loans to lower those monthly payments. And so it's really just seeing what the big picture is. What's their occupation? What types of loans do they have? And are they eligible or not? And so it's really a big puzzle, and just trying to figure out also where their income is, because they may have some interest that they pay on these loans that's tax deductible, or maybe they don't. And so when you look at this, it's how do we develop this game plan? How much more do we overpay? Do we overpay? And really trying to craft what's best for them now and what's best for them down the road. Not to just complicate but it is pretty complex to the point where one strategy today, while they're single and they just got out of school or grad school, and then they get married, we need to change their repayment plans because we may want to include or exclude their spouse's income. And so really trying to figure out, knowing, hey, we might meet with them year one or year two, and that was the right thing for them at that time. And then we have to revamp the whole strategy 3, 4, 5 years later.
So the Parent Plus loan being one that you brought up just a few minutes ago, as kind of the more popular one. Mm-hmm. Can you explain what the difference of that is versus a standard loan? Like, is it, you have the parent associated with it? So is the parent on the hook, or what? Is that part of this public forgiveness side of things as well, or kind of how do these two things play together?
So the parent is on the hook on the Parent Plus loan.
Okay.
And then if, I'd say the majority of clients come out, and let me just take grad school, for example. They'll take out the max unsubsidized loans or subsidized if they qualify. And they typically will take the max federal direct loan eligible for them. And then if they need any more, they're going to go take out a Grad Plus loan. And those can be really large, and those come at a higher interest rate. If they take them out in their name, their parent's not on the hook for them because they're not co-signed. Typically, they're federal loans, and they haven't refinanced them out. But if it's a Parent Plus loan, the parent is on the hook for those loans.
Okay. All right. So that's a lot of detail. I would think that there is some value to having that kind of view of it on the front end if clients are looking at, all right, how do I finance this stuff and what do I do? The public loan forgiveness program, probably one of the most common topics we've had recently because of the tax-free forgiveness side of it. Do you see students, I would assume that they probably know what they're wanting to do if they're hiring you to guide them from a major perspective, like what they want to, they think they know what they want to do after school. How often do they actually stay that course, do you think?
Oh gosh, I mean, just speaking for myself, I've switched courses twice, so I think a large percentage of them don't. I think there's a misconception about what it means to be a doctor or a lawyer or an engineer or whatever, and then when they actually get to that point, I think that's when a lot of changing of majors happen. So that's why I said, at least giving them some exposure starting in the 9th and the 10th grade, whether that's shadowing, interning. Everything's virtual now. You can find so much information. So just spending that time carefully understanding, if that's really what you want to do. And then also, especially like being a doctor, I don't think students or maybe even parents realize the amount of debt that comes along with that. And so it might sound fun and flashy, but
what's the average, Rob?
I'd say if they don't have undergrad debt and they just have if they just have grad school debt, I'd say probably somewhere between $250 and $300.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Per person.
So $250,000.
Yeah.
And then let's see, 4 years of undergrad, 4 years of med school, and post med school training, probably another 3 to 4 years. So another 11 years roughly of education.
Absolutely.
From high school.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a pretty big commitment.
Number one, it's a commitment. And I don't believe students are aware of that. So I try to combat that.
So the theme of the virtual education with kids not being in classes in 2020, do you think that has any lasting impact on higher education going forward? And what do you think that might do from a cost perspective with college?
Okay. I think personally it's definitely a lasting effect. Just the students that I'm working with now, not being able to find out what their interests are, volunteer, get a job. I think that has affected their college applications. But all I've heard is really a negative perspective from having classes online and not really getting what you pay for, and those expectations. So I don't, really see things going virtually for college students.
No.
But
I would be shocked, though, if they don't incorporate some level of virtual options as a way to control some of the costs. Like I could see that happening, where they say, all right, we're going to give you a virtual option only versus you having an option to come into class. I can see them being able to scale it pretty fast, too.
Yeah.
Do you see value from the options of going to a technical college initially to get some of these remedial courses out of the way? And is that something that's pretty common, or is that not that smooth of a process?
It's a very smooth process. It is not common.
Really?
Because it is not popular to do that. I think there's a stigma around going to a 2-year school. And I encourage students, especially that are interested in nursing, number one, as long as you have the life scholarship here in the state of South Carolina, your 2-year school is covered for those 2 years. You would receive the life scholarship. And so you're getting those fundamental classes out of the way, and you can work with an advisor to transfer seamlessly to a Clemson nursing program or a different USC nursing program. So I really try to incorporate that. I would say there's a lot of pushback. But even things like trades, like welding, they make 6 figures, and people don't realize that at all. So those are things that I try to expose them to, which again, like trying to start earlier to be able to have that time to go down those avenues and explore that.
So if the average cost of a year of school is $35,000 and you can get 2 of them essentially paid for,
yes,
it seems like it kind of seems like a no-brainer.
It does.
Like it really does.
It does.
And it gives you time to sort of figure out where you actually want to end up being.
Absolutely.
So the acceptance rate for a incoming freshman, let's just use Clemson as an example, right out of high school versus the 2-year transition, is it about the same, or is it actually easier?
I think it's much easier. I mean, even honestly, if you have a dream of going to Georgia Tech, and let's say you go to Clemson Engineering, you don't get into Georgia Tech, but if you do well your first year at Clemson in the pre-engineering program, it's a lot easier to get into Georgia Tech that way,
okay.
Or MIT or Caltech or whatever. So that's always an option as well.
Cool. All right. So we've talked about going to school for free, which would be great. I have 4 kids. That'd be awesome. That's probably my biggest worry right now. We've talked about paying or approaching to pay off the student loans on the backside of this. From a saving standpoint, so Rob, we work with clients on helping them save for college. Do you see clients come to you who have adequately prepared for college from a saving standpoint? And is that one of those, man, I wish we'd have done this 15 years ago?
It's definitely a I wish.
Is that one of those I wish we had done?
Yes.
Okay. The ones that you see who are saving for it, how does that change their decision making?
In terms of?
About where their kid ends up going to school? Well,
I think, with the 529 plan, I mean, I think, it can only be used for certain amounts of things. So it really depends. I really think at the end of the day, when students choose what school that they go to, it always comes down to the money. It always comes down to financials. So, whether they've saved or whether they've not saved, then I think that's the driving force. But I also, have heard multiple times, we just want our student to be happy. And if we have to take out whatever loans to get them there, then that's what we'll do. And that breaks my heart. But.
Oh, man. Okay, Rob, talk through the dangers of that.
So I think the biggest thing is when we see clients trying to help out their kids go to college, it's great, and it's a really nice gift they're giving their child, but they can always take out loans for the child and still pay them. They can't take out a loan for retirement. And so we always want to make sure that they are prioritizing the right way, because they're probably it's probably a better gift to make sure that their kids never have to take care of them down the road, as opposed to sending them through college. And so that's a struggle that we have, is getting people to kind of see that. But just because you take out loans doesn't mean you're not going to help them pay it. And so really looking at the big picture and making sure that they're prioritizing the right things and still addressing what they really want to do. But it's a difficult, emotional, discussion there.
And I know we're harping on the money side of this, but that's kind of what we do. The one question I always have when seeing kids go through college, and no offense to any history majors or English majors or anything like that, is it really worth them going to spend $140,000 on tuition to get a history degree?
No.
Like kind of thinking about weighing the cost versus what you're going to be paid on the back end of this. Do you have that conversation with them?
Absolutely. I mean, a lot of students want to be psychology degrees or get a business degree, and it's okay. Well, or biology. You can get that degree anywhere. I think it really is. You need to look at the end result. Is what sorts of opportunities will that school, if it does cost that much, what are they providing you? How many fellowships are they getting for graduate school? What's their placement? What's their passage rate on, LSAT and MCAT and all of that? So if you are going to take that large of investment, you need to make sure you're getting something back.
It seems to be that is a growing conversation with folks. I know you mentioned the trade side of things where, HVAC, plumbing, welding, all of those things, not nearly as high of a cost to get certified in those trades, but man, they actually really make a lot of money on the back end.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And there's
the
programs.
Return is pretty good.
Yeah. There's programs in Greenville County schools as well that can get you there before you even finish high school. So by using the career centers. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So I guess the last thing I would ask is, as kids are going through high school, I know there's some opportunities for them to take college classes early. Kind of how do they fit into that? Where do they go? How do they get into it?
Well, that's a big hot topic, is whether to take AP or dual enrollment classes. So lots of times 2-year schools will have a time on campus where students can come take those classes for free. But really, what college admissions is looking for is for you to take those AP courses. We can really start getting into the nitty gritty of it. But if you come with, 36 credits from X school, then, yield is what the higher ed calls it. They want to make sure you're actually going to attend for the full cost as well. So if you come with half of your education finished, then you're not going to be paying as much as well either. So that's another conversation. But yes, can it prop you up to save some money? But it's not always the best.
So the schools may
route.
Look at that as a negative?
Yes.
Wow.
They can.
I didn't expect you to say that.
Depends on the school.
Yeah, I didn't expect you to say that at all.
Yield.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, it's definitely a hot topic in the past few years now, just with schools going test optional and really worried about, okay, if we accept you, are you actually going to come to our school? So.
And are you going to pay for 4 years, basically?
Yes.
Well, I guess they got to make money too.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Is there anything that you would advise parents? So kind of that one takeaway, if you could say, all right, it's a kind of a blanket recommendation, I guess you would say. What would you tell that one family who they've got a 10th grader and they're starting down this process? Mm-hmm. What's the one thing that you would hope they would just use to start? Like, what would that tip be?
Yeah. Find out who you are, what your kid is, and taking that with a grain of salt. These are teenagers. They're exposed to a variety of things on a daily basis. But if you truly want to help your child on the path to success, then really finding out what their interests are, what they're good at, and then move in that direction, instead of trying to do what someone else has done or what you think might be right. And I think that's important for long-term happiness for your child as well.
Okay. All right, Rob, your turn. One piece of advice, either on the back end of figuring out what to do with student loans or helping parents think about how do you position yourself to financially help or provide.
So one call I actually had this morning, and it's only a few months left of this, but a client was looking to refinance their federal student loans when right now through the end of January, it's 0%, no payments due, interest won't accrue. And so really for them, anyone who has federal loans right now, even if they're not public service loan forgiveness eligible, stay on the federal loans, pay towards principal right now for as long as this COVID student loan relief lasts, and then look to refinance when you get out. Because these large balances, as soon as you refinance to even a lower interest rate, it's probably going to cost you money. So for the next 4 or 5 months, I was telling them, stay where you are. We'll revisit it. Even if the interest rates slightly go up, these principal payments they're able to make over the next few months are going to be very impactful.
All right.
And it's not going to increase.
Good deal. Okay, so Emily, we have 2 questions that we have asked every guest that have joined us.
Okay.
Rob's already gotten blitzed with this one a few times. All right, so the first one is, if you could buy anything in the world, regardless of what it costs, what would it be?
Yes. Oh, Lord. This is silly, but I really would love a BMW X5.
All right, she was quick.
Yeah.
She knows what she wants. All right, and then the last 2 things you spent money on.
Oh, Lord. What did I do yesterday? Probably snacks for my son. And oh my word, I don't know. Something at Target.
Something at Target, probably the same place, right?
Yes.
Snacks are good. Okay. Let everybody know how they can reach out to you, how they can connect with you if they want to talk more about how you can help.
Yeah, absolutely. So you can email me or you probably start at my website, which is butlercollegecounseling.com. And there you'll find, links to call, email, set up an appointment with me. First consultation's free. We talk, generally about your student and what ways that, I might be a good fit. And we can take it from there.
Thank you. All right. If you have suggestions or questions, topics that you want us to cover, you can always email us. You can find us directly on our website at fostervictor.com, or you can follow us on Instagram at Foster Victor Wealth Advisors. Please share this with someone who you think might find it interesting if they're going through this college prep cycle, or if they're trying to figure out how to pay these loans off. Thanks again for spending some time with us. We'll see you next time. Information contained in this podcast was intended for general use, not to be used as specific advice. For content tailored to your personal situation, please contact one of our wealth coaches.